Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Unlimited. Today, we are talking about aligning life as a multi-passionate, which can actually seem really complicated when you have so many things that you're interested in. You feel pulled in a lot of different directions, and deciding what to focus on, what to monetize, what you actually want to do as it becomes buried in all of the shoulds of life and what it looks like to do those things can be a bit overwhelming and difficult to discern. As a multi-passionate myself, I've navigated these waters from what is the thing that I'm focused on right now and what is something that might be later. What do I want and what do I let go of? And how do I make those decisions? I connected with Bev Feldman a few years back, and her journey is very much aligned with that concept of navigating life as a multi-passionate and making decisions that fit who you are in the various phases of your life and what you think it's supposed to look like or will look like, and then finding out it looks a little bit different and being able to pivot and adjust to fit who you want to be in the world. Bev's entrepreneurial journey began a decade ago when she launched her Etsy shop selling her handcrafted jewelry after returning from a 5-month backpacking honeymoon around South America with her husband. After pivoting that business as a handcrafted jewelry maker into a digital business teaching other jewelry making, she realized that she had a knack for the tech part of email marketing. Bev then launched Your Personal Tech Fairy, a technology management service for coaches and service providers who need help setting up heart-centered automated email sequences that build genuine relationships and connections with their customers. Bev loves geeking out on technology, getting online platforms to fit together like a puzzle so her clients can focus their time and energy on the parts of their business that light them up. When she's not working on her business, you can find her sharing her journey to living a more eco-friendly lifestyle on her blog, Bev Goes Green. Bev and I are going to be talking about this journey that took her from jewelry making into tech setup. And we're going to be exploring topics such as identifying and aligning with your values in your work, embracing your passions as part of you, not who you are, how to grow from what isn't working, reframing what it means to be an expert, and we're even throwing in a few eco-friendly birthday ideas. So, without further ado, let's get started. Hey there, I'm Valerie Friedlander, Certified Life Business Alignment Coach, and this is Unlimited. This podcast bridges the individual and the societal, scientific and spiritual, positive and negative, nerdy and no, there's just a lot of nerdy. Come on board and let's unlock a life that's as badass as you are. Welcome, Bev. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast.
I am very excited to be here.
Before we get started, why don't you tell everyone just a little bit about you in your own words?
Yeah, so my name is Bev Feldman, and I am an entrepreneur and blogger and mom of 2 youngish daughters, and I live in the Boston area.
So you and I got to know each other a little bit at an entrepreneur gathering where you were doing work as a jeweler, making some beautiful jewelry. And you've had such a diverse career in entrepreneurship and particularly online entrepreneurship. And I love so much of the different aspects of what you've done, the multi-passionate example of everything. And so I wanted to have you on the podcast to share a little bit about that journey, because I think there's so much around being a multi-passionate person that can get really overwhelming, and everyone's journey with what that looks like is different. And you've tackled this in such a fascinating way of what has drawn you and seeing the progression of those interests in to where you are doing work now and how you're creating a fulfilling life for yourself. So I'd love for you to share with everyone a little bit about like what has that multi-passionate journey looked like?
Yeah. So you were right. When we first met, I was in a very different place in my entrepreneurial journey. So like you said, I had a jewelry business. And I'd had this business for a number of years. I'd started it before I became a mom with the thought being, oh, I'll have this business. And when I have kids, it'll give me lots of flexibility and freedom to be a stay-at-home mom. And yes, it did. It's also not that straightforward to be a stay-at-home mom / business owner. But that's not what brought me to where I am now. So, when we had first met, and I actually, we had worked together. I ended up hiring you to do some coaching for me. And it came up this feeling that this jewelry business, which in so many regards, I did really enjoy. I loved the creative process of making jewelry, of coming up with design ideas, testing them out to see if they'd work, tweaking things. Like I loved that. But there were so many parts of this business that just did not align with my values and the type of life I wanted to live. So for example, when we connected, I think we worked together in like November, which is kind of the peak busyness season if you have a product-based business, because that's the holiday season and you've got lots of shows and hopefully making lots of sales, and you're supposed to be pushing those sales. And I just was not feeling it. Both of my kids are born. They're born right before and right after Thanksgiving. So right in the middle of this. And I really, I have these visions of like what birthdays are going to look like for my kids and celebrating them. And while I think a lot of us as moms have visions of what motherhood's going to look like. And a lot of times it's not like that at all, which is totally fine. But like I had found with my business, it was kind of getting in the way of really being present with their birthday celebrations and being present with Thanksgiving, which is one of my favorite holidays in the sense that I look at it as time to go home to my parents' house in New Jersey, and we are usually there for a longer period of time. And we do this family meal with some family friends, and it's so much fun. But in the back of my head, I'm like, okay, well, it's Thanksgiving. Tomorrow's Black Friday, which means I have to start thinking about the big holiday sale weekend. And it's not what I wanted to be thinking about on a holiday. I wanted to just enjoy the holiday, enjoy this time with my extended family and friends who I don't get to see as often as I'd like. And so I remember talking to you about this, and you kind of pushing me in a really in a very Valerie kind of way, and that got me in like a really good way that got me thinking like, why am I doing this? And it's kind of like, I don't know if I took one econ class in college, and I remember the one element besides supply and demand that really sticks out to me is the idea of a sunk cost, where it's like, I think a lot of times we get so into, well, I've invested all this time and energy into this thing that I'm doing now, whether it's getting a degree or going a certain career path or starting a business. And I'm like, well, I've invested all this time in learning and money and energy and tears and whatnot in this business, and it feels like a waste to give it up. But at that point, it was kind of like a sunk cost that it wasn't bringing me the fulfillment that I'd wanted. I was kind of resenting it in a lot of ways for a variety of reasons. And it also didn't align with this value that I had been nurturing on eco-friendly living. So while I was my jewelry, I made it was a very mindful, purposeful business, and that my goal was always to make these pieces that I saw as being very versatile so that people didn't have to go out and buy lots of things, and that it wasn't going out and buy the cheapest thing you can that then breaks a week later. But it's still, there was this conflict where in my own life, I'm buying things used as much as possible and trying to be in many ways a minimalist in that regards. And here I am also promoting buy my stuff. So there was this misalignment there. So I remember talking to you about this and, well, what would it look like if I didn't do this? What would it look like if I started to focus more on this journey of eco-friendly living? And I can't remember if it's when I talked during those times that we talked together or if it came later, but I had this idea of why don't I start a blog on eco-friendly living? Because a lot of my business journey before I had done a lot of blogging, but I decided to put it on hold. And I waited till January after the busy holiday season was over to see if it was still of interest to me. And it was. So was like, all right, I'll have my jewelry business kind of in the background. If I make a sale, great, but I'm not going to put all this time and energy into it. And I started this blog called Bev Goes Green, and it's been great. And I really enjoy kind of promoting this aspect of my life that's really important to me that felt a little weird sharing because I don't want to come off as preachy or even as someone who, like, I don't think I have all the answers. It's still a learning process for me. And then I was trying to figure out, well, do I want to do this as a business? Do I want to just make it a blog? And ultimately I decided I'm just going to let it be a blog. And then simultaneously, I should back up, my jewelry business, then had come to this decision, you know what? I'm done selling my jewelry. I don't even care if it's on the back burner. I'm just done. I'm going to have a massive sale. I'm going to sell off as much inventory as I currently have. And then I'm going to close the shop. And as soon as I did that, all this space opened up somewhere to transform this business into teaching people jewelry making. I got trapped in that again of, well, I've invested all this time and energy on this website, which thanks to Pinterest is still bringing me lots of traffic, which is why I ended up creating this other business teaching people jewelry making. So I kind of worked on it some more. I made some tweaks, and I was just, again, getting caught in this cycle of I'm going to push and try to make this thing work. And it never got to the point where I wanted it to be. And it was, the kind of this resentment over this business and wondering, like, what am I doing wrong? And then in the summer-ish of 2020, so I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, what's my next step? Like at this point, I've so fully identified as an entrepreneur. I can't imagine going back to the workforce. But I'm like, this other thing clearly isn't working. I don't want to turn my blog on eco-friendly living into a business. I had done some content marketing, doing some freelance, but that never felt right either. So I'm like, okay, well, what's next? And I had done a little bit of work for someone doing some like email marketing stuff, but the tech part of it. And it was like a light bulb went off. Like all these years, all this energy I had invested in learning, seemingly wasting my time on specifically within ConvertKit, which is my email platform. And I was like, oh my God, this is what I should be doing. Like I had gone to school thinking I wanted to be in the helping profession. And I could never figure out as a jewelry designer, like, well, how am I actually helping people? But it was like, I had this epiphany. I was like, oh, I can help other business owners with something that they legitimately need help with, which is setting up their email marketing, feeling frustrated by the tech part of it, recognizing it's an important part of their business, but getting stuck in it because they need some assistance. Whereas I love it. To me, I find I feel like I'm one of a few people, but like, I really enjoy figuring it out. To me, it's like a puzzle. Like, how do I make all these pieces fit together? And so from there, I started talking to some other business owners to kind of see if there would actually be a need for this. And out of that was born my latest business venture, Your Personal Tech Fairy.
I love how it all kind of comes together. One of my favorite words is cottywomple, which is to walk purposefully in an unknown direction. And, recently I posted a quote by an unknown person that is, don't hold on to a mistake just because you spent a long time making it. Mm-hmm. And I loved that because it's a great reminder when you've spent a long time on something that it is okay at a certain point to go, okay, it's time to let that go. That is no longer serving in the way that maybe it did initially, or maybe it was intended. And it's time to take a look and go, what role does this play in my life at this time? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's just to stick it on a shelf and wait and see what it turns into. But that's okay, follow those leadings, follow those passions. And eventually there's going to be that moment that was so true for me too, in so much of my journey, though mine took me through a lot more corporate work, going, oh, okay, this isn't like some aspect of this is feeding me, but there's a lot that is draining me. There's, those costs that we don't necessarily put a lot of value on because we're taught to focus on the financial costs. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And sometimes a little bit like the time costs, but we don't really look at the energetic costs. Mm-hmm. And those feed into the time and money costs just as much as the actual time and money costs. And I think that's, your journey is such a great highlight of that, to be like, you know what? There are some really important parts of my life that I'm not able to really focus and pour into. And I don't want to keep sacrificing those for this. Like the cost benefit analysis is not balanced. I also personally, I love the fact that it's the birthdays, because I love doing all the birthday things.
Mm-hmm.
So I would actually, just as a little side thing, I would love to know, what are birthdays like for you?
Like for me personally, or in our household?
Well, you said like that those were important. You weren't able to focus. I mean, and there's like focus, but I was just curious, like as a crafty person who likes to put things together. I know for me in my house, I'm all about, not for the adults so much as like the kids. I'm like, what's the theme? We're going to make a cake. We're going to like make party favors. I love to like get my craft on with the birthday party, because it's like such a great excuse for that.
Oh, I totally agree. Well, it's funny. I always thought I would be that mom who got really crafty for my kids' birthdays, and I don't. And I don't know what it is. I mean, so each of my kids, we have a notebook. So instead of giving them a birthday card, my husband and I each separately write kind of a note to them about what's happened over the last year, and like some things that, you know, we want to highlight about them that we really enjoy at this particular age. So that's become a big thing for us. I don't know if my kids fully appreciate it yet. I think my older one, who is 7.5, maybe now that she can read, she'll start to appreciate it a little bit more. But I have carried on this tradition that my parents did with me. So I'd wake up on my birthday, and my birthday presents would be in my room. And so while there is that eco-friendly side of mine that I keep in mind as with the presents, a lot of times, like, I don't necessarily believe with giving my kids presents that it has to be something brand new. I think something that's new to them is still very exciting. Actually, for one of my own birthdays several years ago, my husband took my older child to a really great women's consignment store near our house, and they picked out some things for me together, including some very sweet heart-shaped sunglasses. They're like red and heart-shaped. So that's like part of the day, is like starting out, presents are there, their birthday notebook is there, and we read it to them. And then, you know, I let them pick out, like, what do you want to eat today? I have not made a birthday cake for my kids since my older one was smaller, mostly because the first year they thought she had a dairy intolerance. So it was just easier for me to just make a cake that was dairy free. And it was quite delicious. And there was this amazing video of her being a year and like just digging into this cake and then getting all hyper afterwards.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love that notebook idea. I'd seen it in the concept of having teachers write a little note, like each teacher progressively, and then when they graduate high school or something, you give them this notebook. But I had not thought of, I love that, instead of cards and the wastefulness of cards, to do a notebook.
This idea actually came up. I can't take any credit for it. Within like my local moms group, I think it came up as like, instead of doing like a Father's Day or Mother's Day card, do that. And then I just translated that into, I will do this for my kid's birthday. Yeah. So it's kind of like my husband and I have one now, like we each have our own, and we both also write in it on Mother's Day and Father's Day and our birthdays and our anniversaries. So it's like the celebratory book, I guess.
Oh, I love that. I love that idea. I was always, for milestones, have people send around a little notebook to write me a note on.
I love that.
A particular day. So I've got like a few books of like when I was moving certain people, or like when I turned 21, they mailed around this little book where people wrote notes from like across my life in it. So I love, but I had never thought of it like for birthdays. So thank you for that idea. That's awesome. And those kinds of ideas of the creative ways to be more eco-friendly in the world, I think so often we get caught in routines, and like what you were saying of, I spent so much time doing it this way and it's easier to do it this way, and being able to give people alternatives that might not actually be that difficult to implement and could save a lot of time and money. And then we have those costs that we can address. you mentioned something exploring that of knowing that there's a lot of like judginess around certain spaces, things around being elitist, as it were, around like, oh, well, what does it take to do that? And there are a lot of things that cost a lot more money, unfortunately, to be able to transition into being more eco-friendly. But I thought it was interesting highlighting, I don't have all the answers, but I can share what I do know. And that plays a lot with something that I've noticed a lot of online entrepreneurs fall into as far as that expert syndrome. And I would imagine it probably also plays into what you're doing now of that need to like, I should know all the things. Like in order to be able to help people, I have to be an expert. And maybe like there's this vague idea of what it looks like to be an expert that hasn't been defined. So you don't know what enough is to be able to serve people. And so I wonder, both with your blog that's still going and your work now, what has helped you lean into or define what enough is and lean into being an expert in a space that you're clearly acknowledging that you're not all knowing in?
Yeah, I love that question. And it's something that I have in the past definitely struggled with. And I don't remember, I can't pinpoint who or what brought me to this understanding. And it may have been several people, but this realization is no matter what you do or where you're at in your journey, if your quote unquote level of expertise is only expertise enough to help those who aren't quite the same level you are. So I look at, for example, we'll take Bev Goes Green, my blog on eco-friendly living. There are tons of people out there who know way more about climate change than I will ever know because I'm not a climate scientist. But my goal isn't to look at people who do this for a living, who understand, the whole process of this and the rise in temperature and all of that. My goal is to look at people who are just starting to look at this and realize, oh, this is a problem. What can I do to make sure that this world is inhabitable for our children? So that's kind of like, and with my own business as well, like I'm not looking at people who are experts at, in this case, my particular platform is ConvertKit. I'm looking at people who their zone of genius is more in the creative part, like serving clients. I tend to work with a lot of coaches, and they are so good at what they do. And either it's because, they convince themselves, or really it just doesn't come naturally to them, that they can't figure it out. Like they're, as they tell me, their brain just doesn't think that way to figure out how to get all the pieces of tech to work. That's who I'm serving. I'm not serving people who are like super proficient at it. So it's just reminding ourselves that we don't have to serve everyone within kind of this like umbrella of what we do. We're serving people in a small subset of that.
Yeah. Well, I love what you just said, highlighted to me that idea of purpose. To be able to define what enough is, you need to know what your purpose is in the work that you're doing. Because if it's undefined, then it's like, it could be anything. And that can be really overwhelming. As much as, we talk about being unlimited, there are times when we have to create a container for our ability to focus. And,
yes,
I'll speak for myself. I hired you to help me set up a new system in Honeybook because I wanted to use something that was a little bit more streamlined for client experience. I wanted something that wasn't taking as much energy for me to do so that it was easier for me and easier for my client. But putting all of the pieces together was something, okay, maybe I could do, but I didn't want to have to sit through training videos. It was one more thing to take me away from the work that I do. And so going back to that whole idea of time and money and energy, it would eat more time for me to do it. and it would drain my energy because it's not something that comes naturally to me, and it's more exhausting. It just takes parts of my brain that I am not living as much in.
Mhm.
Now, if it was my goal to grow those parts of my brain and, dig into that, if that was something that I wanted to learn, that'd be one thing. But like, it's not. I love what I do. I'm good at what I do. So I want to focus on those things. And so it makes sense to get help with someone who loves doing that kind of thing, like you, who is good at it, who has experience doing it, and was able to put together something that works really nicely for me and help me understand how it works so that I could work in it and make adjustments and such as I go along, as I learn and get more involved in that space, or maybe my business evolves and I want to change some things up. But it's been brilliant. It made it so
Yay.
much easier to do that. So yeah, having that clarity of purpose so that you can focus and do what you do best makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I am curious with what you said about knowing that you didn't want your blog to be a business. What led you to that decision?
So it's not something that came right away. Like I mentioned earlier, I have a lot of experience blogging. So at this point, when I'd started Bev Goes Green, I had enough knowledge in how to monetize a blog and have a digital business to have pursued it if I really wanted to. But ultimately, I didn't want to feel the pressure to constantly churn out content, both on my blog and most likely on some form of social media, because I feel like to be a blogger or influencer, it requires a lot of consistency on these platforms. And it's not how I wanted to spend my time. And I'd run into this with my previous business. And I also, it's a tricky place to be in when you're promoting not buying stuff and then figuring out, okay, well, if I have to make money through affiliate income, trying to navigate that is tricky.
Yeah.
And I don't want to promote something that I don't 100% believe in, because then it's just, what's the point? Then I'm not being true to myself, and then I'm not going to feel good about it. And that's not to say that I don't promote things per se. There's certain products, like consumable products. So I don't, by consumables, I mean like a bar of soap, for example. Like theoretically, you're going to run out of bar of soap and you're going to need to replace it. So I might say, well, here's the bar of soap I recommend, and here's why. But it's also like, I don't feel as tied to saying buy this specific brand of soap, more like buy a bar of soap that works for you versus a bottle of body wash that is more wasteful and also wasting your money because it's mostly water anyway, and you're paying for that water and the packaging and the extra weight of getting it to your house. So I think the biggest reason of why I didn't want to create a business is just to give me more freedom with it, to not take off that pressure to do the constant churn of content and that pressure of feeling like I have to promote things. Like I don't want to be a walking advertisement, which, not to say that bloggers are, but it can be too easy to fall into that trap.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, you and I recently had a conversation about the like detergent and soaps and the places that like we're looking at, okay, how do we get rid of some of the bottles that we have where we're consuming plastic, trying to lower our plastic consumption. And so you were able to go, oh, here's this blog that I have that outlines a variety of different ones and things I've tried, as well as like, I think you shared one like about sunscreen, not, well, I was going to say not long ago, but time doesn't have meaning anymore. I think it was probably a while ago.
Yeah, I wrote that blog post 2 years ago, and it actually reminds me. See, this is where I fall in that trap. Oh, yeah, I've been meaning to email my list about it to remind them, since it's sunscreen season, at least in the northern hemisphere.
Yeah. But that is the kind of thing that when you are multi-passionate and you love to do different things, because you still like to create jewelry, you just aren't selling it. Like that's not a thing that you pour energy into, but it's not like it's
Yes.
left your life entirely.
Yeah. I mean, it is less frequent, but on the flip side, I didn't have a lot of creative space energetically to do other things. And now I have more time to dabble in other things. Like I've been learning brush lettering just for the heck of it.
Oh, that see, and exactly that was a big reason for me to leave corporate. Actually, was like I wasn't exactly sure. I was like, I know I really like this coaching thing that like resonated with me, but I was also like, and I want to be able to do lots of other creative things like
Yes.
making clothes and face painting, surprisingly. And like, but
I
that
love your
ability,
face painting.
thank you.
It's so beautiful. I'm always like, wow. Like whenever these pictures show up in my feed, I'm always blown away. I'm like, wow, Valerie is really talented at this.
Yeah, well, and painting was never a thing that I ever thought I was good at either. And so falling upon face painting, like we had a block party and I was like, yeah, I could contribute that. And I was like, ooh, this is fun. I like this. But like deciding whether or not it's going to be something that you make money doing, like, is it enough of an interest to invest in the business itself, and what level, what role does it play in your life, and how does that fit within your values and your purpose in the work that you do? And that discernment process is kind of ongoing.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way that's expressed in this journey that you've taken, where you've found these different things and had those opportunities to go, okay, what does that look like in my life, and how does it play in with my values? And then having that space to recognize, you know what, it's not this thing is still part of my life, but all of this learning has positioned me to be of service in a way that truly resonates with what I want to put into the world and connect with people and be able to support people as a creative who gets the creative thinking,
Mm-hmm.
but also really enjoys playing with the logic of putting puzzle pieces together. It's a brilliant combination. So I love it. Tell everybody where they can find you and connect with you more.
Yeah, absolutely. So my business website is yourpersonaltechfairy.com. And I would say I'm most active on Instagram. And by most active, I mean, I'm trying not to spend too much of my time within social media because it's a time suck. So for that, my Instagram handle is your.personaltechfairy. And then my blog on eco-friendly living is called Bev Goes Green. So those are the two best ways to connect with me. And again, periodically I'll pop in and do a story on Bev Goes Green, especially as I'm doing something around my house that I'm like, oh, like here's something that I'm doing that minimizes waste or whatnot.
Awesome. All of those links will be in the show notes. I like to wrap up interviews with two questions. Mm-hmm. One is, what does it mean to be unlimited to you?
It's funny. As we started this interview, I was like, oh, what am I going to say? But it kind of came up during our interview. And being unlimited is kind of taking these pieces of ourselves and not letting them necessarily define who we are. So what I mean is, for the longest time, I had a business as a jewelry designer. But I don't have to be stuck in that box. Because I had that business doesn't mean that's what I am for the rest of my life. I'm not like, I don't have to be the owner of a jewelry business. I can be something else. Or the fact that I have a master's degree in education, and, all of that's okay. We can make changes in our lives and we don't have to apologize for that. I think, to me, that's what being unlimited is allowing ourselves to go down different paths and saying that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Not being limited by the various hats that we wear. We can be whoever. Totally resonates.
Exactly.
If you want to feel unlimited, what song would you listen to?
So the song that comes to my mind is Katy Perry's Roar. I don't know if the title of the song is Roar.
Yeah, I think it's Roar. Yeah.
So this song came out, I think, shortly before my older daughter was born. And just in my head, I'd hear it. And I kind of just imagine like it felt like this anthem about giving birth. Like, I am a strong person. Like, I'm a strong woman about to give birth. And I don't know if I actually played it during her birth. I may have, like, who knows what happened. I don't remember.
No, but nobody remembers that.
Yeah. But like every time I hear that song, in a very good and an emotional way, it brings me back to that point in my life of like becoming a mom, giving birth, and just like the like strength in that whole process. And I feel like no matter like how you become, for those of you who are parents, like no matter how you become a parent, whether you give birth to your child, if you do give birth, if it's like a C-section or a vaginal birth, like there's strength in that. Mm-hmm. And so that's just how I think why it can make me feel unlimited.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bev, for being here and sharing. I appreciate it.
This was so much fun, and I thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. I so appreciate you being here. If you got something out of today's episode, please share it. Leave me a review, take a screenshot, and post it on social with a shout out to me. Send it to a friend or, all of the above. Want to hang out more? Join me on Instagram. Or better yet, get on my mailing list to make sure you don't miss out on anything. And remember, your possibilities are as unlimited as you are. Allow yourself to shine, my friend. The world needs your light. See you next time.